And so many people are starting to, build personal brands and things like that. Guys, just be authentic, be yourself. You don't need to flex. You don't need to pretend like you're something you're not. You don't need to be overly masculine if you're not actually, a Navy SEAL. Like just be a human being and care about the connection and bettering somebody's life.
Welcome back to Podcast on Wheels. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and today, virtually, we have in studio Mr. Justin Wenzel. Justin, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Bro, I appreciate you, man, getting to meet you in Vegas, getting to be around you, getting to know you. I wanted to have you on the show to share you with our audience because you have a great story. I would love for you to unpack that story and kind of tell us a little bit about the car business and how that led you to the addiction, etc. Just bring us up. Let us know who you are, brother.
For sure, man. I think one of the things we related on was the auto industry, and that's how I grew up. I grew up really, actually, honestly, not really a setup to become a full-blown addict. That's for sure. Great family, very supportive father. My parents had me when they were really young, and my dad started his entrepreneur journey when he was really young in his early 20s, like about 21 or 22 years old. And I kind of was raised around it, watched him take risks, watched him fail, watched him succeed, and it was a really good experience. He kind of took me along for the ride as I grew up. Went to college, wasn't a great student, wasn't a bad student, just got through and got some really good experience with my education, and then went into the auto industry, and specifically at high volume. And when you're in high volume, if you know it, work hard, play hard. I loved playing hard, and that turned into a pretty slippery slope. And I got, early on when everybody was taking painkillers, I got really hooked on painkillers. Shed that pretty quick. It got pretty bad at one point, but not terrible like you hear. And alcohol was kind of always like my thing, right? And introduced that to some other party drugs and things like that. And I would consistently blow relationships, self-sabotage, and it got really bad. And when it got too bad, it was like, okay, now I really need to get some help, because your mental health starts to really deteriorate over time. And I got to the point of being, suicidal and super depressed and self-sabotaging over and over again, to where it was like, okay, now it's time to get help.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you work through that, and I've seen some pictures of you from the past. What did you look like during that? What does your body look like during that time?
So I was a very morbidly obese guy. Somehow I was able to gain a ton of weight with a massive cocaine addiction. I don't know how that's possible, but I managed to make it happen. And over time, that slipped out of control too. So I was over 350 pounds. Now I'm a big guy. You've been with me. I'm 6'5". I tower over most people. I usually, like, nowadays I weigh in at like 270 to 280 pounds, but yeah, I was well over 350 pounds, just a fat mess.
Yeah.
And yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just to see you now and know the dedication, like what you're doing for other people, and you're helping people and you're coaching people. Tell us, you've got a couple different businesses. I know the automotive thing from the past, but you're also, helping a lot of people, doing a lot of things there.
So what's interesting is I had my body transformation before I got sober. Most people you see in the situation that I'm in get sober, then they fall in love with fitness, right? Well, it was actually completely the opposite for me. I fell in love with fitness because I wanted to look good when I was partying. So, I would do whatever it took to be able to maintain my habits and get jacked. And all I cared about was getting jacked. So it didn't matter if it was the healthy way or not. I was taking everything I could, meanwhile also drinking, partying, and doing all that stuff. And I made it happen. And at the same time, I was running a showroom with one of my best friends. We had a big store, and we were both really jacked, and everybody else in the auto industry was fat. So I started, people started asking me, like, dude, you guys are bringing, like, we had back then, you remember the 6-pack lunch boxes? They still exist. I just don't use one anymore.
Right.
But we would bring, like, my partner at the store and I would bring our 6-pack lunch boxes with our meal plans and everything, and all the fat salesmen were like, looking at what we were eating and stuff like that. And it was like right in front of me the entire time, but I never looked at it as like something I could turn this into. So after I get sober, I start learning about more online coaching and things like that. And I'm like, man, this is actually something people have asked me about. And there actually is a problem here because the auto industry in particular is very obese, very alcohol, a lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of divorce. The industry. It's pretty rotten when it comes to vices. And so I was kind of looking at it like, if I could offer a program to guys who work a lot of hours, right? You're in the showroom, you have a microwave and a break room, and be able to create something that works around these guys' lifestyle basically, and something that they can actually see gains, then this would be really cool. And obviously, I believe that you can only coach if you've actually done it. Right. Like a lot of guys out there like haven't done it. Like I did battle addiction while running showrooms, while losing a ton of weight and doing all of that. I've actually accomplished that and I fucking smoked it out of the park, right? So I wanted to be able to pass that to the next person just as, we're supposed to, right? Knowledge and experience and stuff like that is not ours. It's not ours to keep. We need to pass it to the next person. So I wanted to create something like that and it was a hit. Now, I went to college with a bunch of other people that were in the auto industry, so I had kind of a good network built up. I knew the people to ask. Obviously, people saw my transformation throughout the 9 years that I went through it and the ups and downs and everything that I went through with that. So it was very relatable to my specific avatar. So that's where it all started, man.
That is so cool that you just, saw the opportunity and turned it into this. Now, you're a coach who, you visit your clients. I see you're at different places or you'll have meetings, you're engaged. I see some coaches, some programs, they give you more or less the syllabus. You have once a week call. Like, what's it like to work with you? I see you being like, I don't know. I send you a message, I get a response. It's like, boom, you're there.
Well, so I got into this to connect with people. I actually enjoy making connections and building friendships and relationships. That's what this is really all about. I read Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, when I was in college and read it over and then read it again. And I was like, man, having friends is cool. Like, it doesn't always have to just be like, here's your fucking course and move on and get out of here. Like, why not start to turn something into a community? The other thing too, Brian, is since COVID, right? There were a lot of people out there putting out courses. There's been a lot of people, everybody signed up for a course since COVID, right? And there's a huge trust deficit. There's been a lot of guys out there that have misled, that have overpromised situations. So I wanted to be like completely transparent from the get-go. And I wanted to be able to say, like, listen, I may be able to help you, I may not. Here's what I did to get to where I got to, and all the stuff I've learned along the way. I'm just going to give it out. And if you want to be invested in a community of people that are all doing it with you, and everything is very human connection, very personalized, I do meet with people. People fly out to Huntington Beach every single week to spend, a couple days with me. I usually block out my calendar for 24 hours, to be able to take people that are my paid clients to lunch, golfing, training, filming content, shooting a podcast, things like that. That stuff means a lot to me. I don't make any money from doing that. In fact, most of the time it costs me money. But it's like, man, like now I have like friends and people and like, a reputation, right? Because it's all built on human connection. I actually do what I say I want to do. By the only way I can really prove it is by actually meeting you and doing it in person. I mean, it's the best way.
Yeah. And I'll say, and the guests that we've had on this show and the people that I've gotten to meet, and you're friends with a lot of these guys, like the guys that at a certain level, they do show up every day and they're on time and they do what they say they're going to do. For you, Justin, what's a story, maybe a guy that you coached or somebody you're working with that you saw them kind of do the same thing you did, and tell us one of those stories about somebody you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my favorites that comes to mind is Clark Adams. Okay. And we really don't relate much on a lot. He's law enforcement. He was a Texas Ranger SWAT hostage negotiator. Okay. So a bad dude, right? Like,
Mhm.
he's seen some stuff, right? And obviously with that job, Texas is a big state. So he's on a helicopter constantly going from like meth head trailer park, husband has wife and kids locked up in there, barricaded and whatnot, very stressful. He has children, he has all of that. So he's also completely the opposite of me there, where he's not very outgoing. And I can talk about him like this. We've become very close. He's not a very outgoing dude. He's pretty monotone, pretty, just kind of Texas dude, chill. Seen a lot. You can tell he's seen a lot. He's jacked, but he's not like me where there's like a lot of like, animation and personality. But one thing that he did that was really interesting is he followed everything that we showed him to a T. And that ultimately allowed him to retire from the Texas Rangers, which if you know anything about the Texas Rangers, that's a pretty serious, people work their entire lives to get into that
Right.
situation. And so obviously he was able to retire from that. Now, again, that's where the parallels come in, right? That's where the similarities come in, where like he trained his entire life to do that. I trained my entire life to be a car dealer. And we were both able to take something that we were really passionate about. But here's where it's different but the same. I went all in on personal relationships and really getting to know people. And he did as well. He started engaging inside of the advertisements that we were running with him on a whole nother level, offering so much free game and really listening to people's problems and actually caring, not leading with the sale, leading with constant gives. You know what I mean? And that's what allowed him. It was that level of understanding, personal connection, and personal touch that allowed him to leave a massive career. And now there's tons of other stories that are just the same as that one, but that one comes to mind because it was somebody that you could so evidently see he gave a shit.
Yeah, and I was, a guy we had on the show the other day. He's a guy who played professional basketball, real estate in Miami. He's got a lot of tattoos. He wears some cool clothes, and he does a lot of cool stuff. And there's some similarities there as far as from the outside looking at you, him. At the same time, when I was talking to BC the other day, he's talking about that personal connection and that people relationship. It's regardless of what business you're in. Like you just said, you're in automotive. This guy's a ranger. BC's in real estate. But ultimately, it's that people to people connection. So, has that been something that you were gifted with early? Is it growing up in the showroom that got you talking to people? How did you develop this personality?
So when you're a 6-year-old kid, most parents say to you, what? Don't talk to strangers, right? My father would say, go shake that man's hand and introduce yourself to him. And that was my entire life. I was constantly put into situations where it was like, go do a meet and greet. I knew how to do a meet and greet when I was just a child.
Yeah.
And that was important to him. I was brought into the showroom, before I was in school and had to be in school, I was taken into the showroom and I was constantly put in that situation. I'll tell you another funny story. When my dad bought his first store, okay, he had no money. He was like 23 years old. It happened just by like a chance that I told you the story.
Yeah.
But what I was keen enough to do, and I don't know this story from my perception, I only know it from my parents, was that I knew to put my bike on the moving truck because we moved from Michigan to Maine. Okay. I knew to put my bike on the moving truck last. So it would come off first. And the minute that truck parked and my bike came off, I went door to door. Hi, my name's Justin Wenzel. I'm 5 years old. You have any other 5-year-old kids that maybe want to play with me? And that was it. It was like constantly like I wanted to be the guy who had friends and I loved having friends. And the rest of my life, I wanted to be the guy who had friends. It has nothing to do with like Big Circle and Mr. Popular. It has to do with the fact that like when you need a homie, you can call a homie. And that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've got sometimes when I get people on the show, I kind of become selfish, Justin. So I've seen like on your social media, you get to do cool things, you get to do stuff. Some people look at that and say, "Oh, he's bragging about this, bragging about that." For the right people, it's motivation. For the right people, it's like, "Hey, he can do it, we can do it, this can happen." What are some cool things that you've gotten to do that by going through this 9-year transformation and getting clean and doing stuff and like what are some things you've gotten to do now that are really cool?
Well, first of all, to address what you were saying about, the perception that people have when you do show something on your social media, you have to understand it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. right?
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't show anything, then all of a sudden I don't have shit. Who am I to business mentor people? I don't even live the life, right? And
Right.
then if I do, it's I'm bragging and so on and so forth. So I try pretty hard to show my actual life. I drive a nice car. That's because I make good money. It's relative to the money I make, right? I live in a nice area. It's relative to the money that I make. I don't live in the biggest house. I don't do go on these crazy vacations. I vacation a lot. But again, it's relative to the lifestyle that I have, and that's just it. And if I don't show it, then it's what I'm not a good mentor. I don't know. I really don't know. The marketing is there, right?
Right.
But being able to do, as far as being able to do cool stuff, my favorite stuff is the smaller men's workshops and retreats. So far in the last year, I got to, obviously we host our own workshops, but I got to do Jay Ferrugia's workshop with him. And I was just kind of a fly on the wall. And I spoke up when it was kind of my turn to speak. I didn't really make a huge scene, but I ended up making a lot of friends and a lot of now clients and guys that work with us today. Where I met you was at Brad Lee's workshop. I
Mm-hmm.
like the smaller ones. I like being able to go to the smaller ones, be recognized, make connections with people, and have fun. I don't do masterminds. I can't stand masterminds, but the smaller ones I'll show up to and I'll have a great time. And usually those are way more expensive, but I'll still pay to show up to those just to hang out and see people and see what everybody's doing. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So the tattoos. Tell us about the tattoos. Are you completely covered? I've seen them, but what was that during the addiction, after addiction, both? What was that part of?
Yeah, when you have a conservative daddy, he didn't want you to have tattoos. And then you turn
Okay.
18 and you get your first one, a little bit of leeway. You get your second one, a little more leeway. Then you're like, oh shit, I can get away with this. So younger, I was the only freshman in the college I went to with a sleeve of tattoos. And I just kept going. But then I got into my addiction, and getting high was more important than getting my goal, which was to be fully bodysuited. And I had a vision of myself being fully bodysuited in my 20s, and I stopped at my sleeves and my chest. And then once I got sober, I wanted to finish what I started. To me, tattoos show patience and commitment, right? And it shows like that you're willing to put up with the pain and sit through the torture and the recovery and the healing and everything else to be able to have exactly what you want. To me, being fully covered in tattoos is just like being in incredible shape, because again, it's commitment, it's pain, it's sitting, it's you have to invest in it. Obviously tattoos aren't cheap, and to me it was one of those things where I always wanted it, and that's it. Now my throat, head, neck, hands, all of that was a commitment to myself. Want to know why? It was a commitment that I'll never work for somebody again.
Yeah.
Like I have to make it. I don't have an option.
I believe I saw you talk about burning the boat. So was that part of that? Yeah. Yeah. And that's one reason that we get along so well. And I'll tell you that right now, my grandmother's 87 years old, and she made me promise her that I would not get any on my hands or my neck. And I told her, I said, okay. And that's the only reason I haven't, because I'm in the same boat. It's like, but you do things a certain way so long, and you know that you're letting yourself down, your team down, everybody else, around you, if you take that easy path. Because, you know, Justin, as you continue to grow the coaching, as you continue to help these guys, as you continue to develop your brand and stuff, like, I remember the first time I saw you, like, I didn't remember, okay, who was this guy, but I remembered, not what you said, but who you were and that brand. So, like, your logo behind you, different things. Talk to us about your brand, how you've developed that per se. Is that a reflection of you? What's the brand?
So I heard something once that said a brand is not a logo, a brand is a feeling. And that was one thing that I really wanted to bring to JWX and Justin, and just the Justin Wenzel brand as a whole was, my brand is like, I'm big, I'm intimidating. To some people I'm scary, to other people, whatever. I get sized up constantly. But there's one thing that everybody can say is that they feel safe around me, right? That I'm like caring, gentle, and as masculine as I am, I'm vulnerable. And I wanted to always be able to show that side of me. And that was really important. And I think because there's so much like pseudo macho man bullshit out there, and It's like, dog, I put something out yesterday reacting to a cat that was like, when I walk into a room, like people think I'm going to hurt them. I'm like, that's what you want? That's what you're bragging about? Is walking into a room and people thinking that they're going to hurt you? First of all, you better be over 6 foot tall before you even say something like that, because nobody's thinking that unless you tower over people. There is a height limit to ride that ride. And and why would you want anybody to have that perception of you? So then there was another podcast I was on where Tomas, who was a air marshal, he said that when he gets on a plane, when people walk past him, because they usually put air marshals in first class, he said he's looking for a few things. He's looking for threats and he's looking for friendlies. That's the person you want to be. You don't want to be the threat. You want to be the friendly. You want to be the person that when shit goes down, somebody looks to you and says, dude, can you help me? That's the person you want to be, not the when I walk into a room. So that's what I wanted my brand to be. Approachable, but still masculine.
Right. Right. And I bring that up because I also saw on your social media, I believe you were talking about, and that in a way, but that people may be intimidated by you. But, I'm going to share this story. While we were in Vegas at dinner, I'm going to share that you're the one that said, hey, it's this time. I forget exactly what time it was. I think it was even before 10 p.m. And you were like, it's time for me to go to bed. This is my routine. This is what I do. And I'm sitting here, first time meeting you, and I'm going, okay, he's this coach. Look how he looks. He's going to bed at this time. Wow. What committed, discipline, etc. So is that something that, that bedtime routine, that sleep, what's a day like for you? How many hours do you sleep? What is your routine?
So I wish I slept more. I'm trying right now to sleep a little bit more just because I have some physical goals that I'm trying to reach, which is what it is. So normally I go to bed relatively early, 8:30, 9 o'clock. Sometimes I'll watch a little bit of TV till 10, but I'm typically out by 10. My problem is like my mind wakes me up at 3 a.m. and sometimes earlier. And that's not a good situation. So I'm like fighting to get, like, if I have to get up to pee, you know what I mean? Like I'm like trying to keep myself asleep so I could try to get a couple more hours, because I train twice a day. Not fully trained. I want to be completely transparent. I do cardio at one point, right, with my recovery process, and then I strength train. And I don't train 7 days a week. But anyways, I wanted to start focusing more on recovery because that's where gains really are. So this is not a flex saying I get up early. I want to make myself perfectly clear because there's a lot of morning routine stuff out there right now that's getting pretty thrown out. And then, I usually just do my cardio. There's a little boutique gym, a locally owned, cool guy that owns it. That just bought the new place. It's right by my house. I live downtown, right on the beach here in Huntington. Go there, cardio. I do a sauna. I do a cold plunge only because they have a cold plunge there, not because I'm like some like hipster cold plunge guy. I just decided to try doing it and I actually liked it. And then breakfast and calls. And typically my mornings calls, and then I go to my studio. My studio's downtown Huntington, and film with my videographer Freddie, podcast stuff like that, and just do calls throughout the day with different clients and things like that. My day's pretty freaking relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, like you said, you wish you could get some more sleep and recovery, and you started saying you don't work out on Saturdays. And for you guys who are listening, I want you to pick up on what he's saying, man. He's real. He's honest. He's not sitting here saying he's 7 days a week, waking up at 3 a.m. He's telling you the truth. And that's why he's on the show today, because even though you may see him on social media talking about sitting on a shitty bench, which I've seen that probably 10,000 times. One of my favorite clips ever. Every time I see it, I giggle, but you said something about when you find something that works for your brand, when you find something that works for your business and rerunning it, and how, like, that ad per se, it may be a different one, but I'm using that one I see a lot. Reusing that, tell us about that.
Well, so Coca-Cola doesn't need to advertise, right? And yet you see those polar bears every year, right? And there's something about repetition, and when something works, you don't kill it. So, for example, the shitty bench ad, that ad we were just wrapping up recording for the day. We had already recorded 5 ads before that, and we were walking out. There's like a little terrace outside of my house that overlooks like the north side of Huntington. And was like, this is a shitty bench, because it just looks like a shitty bench for like how nice the area is. It's like, this is a
Right.
shitty bench. I go, let's film an ad on the shitty bench, and we'll just talk about the shitty bench. And Scotty and I just dicked around. We had nothing scripted. It was just like him and I riffing off of each other and being silly. We were already whooped for the day. And for whatever reason, the authenticity in that ad and just how we were being goofy and silly, it grabbed, and we hit the right target, and it ended up bringing really great clients in who had humor to them. It also propelled us into the algorithm because there were people talking shit like, who would want to spend money with these thug looking dudes and whatever. And we found it worked. Now I need to also make one thing clear. That was, I had put some money into my teeth, my appearance, things like that, and that was way before I did. So my teeth were shot out still. I was a little I was on a bulk, so I was a little soft.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like I wasn't feeling my best self in that video whatsoever, but I take the emotion out of it because it was performing, and not only performing, it was bringing really good people in. So I think sometimes, and you're friends with Brad, and Brad Lee, he's got kind of like the same sayings and the same things that he repeats a lot, and he knows that because that's what's going to get a rise out of people, or that's what's going to get attention. So you guys don't need to always be like super new and original constantly. Find your like evergreen approach and stick to that approach, because that approach over time will start to stick if it's good, right? If it's not good, then it won't stick. But if it's good, why would you try to change it? And that works the same with advertising too. Like, always try new stuff, but if you land on something, take the emotion out of it. If it's not your favorite ad, run it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Justin, if somebody wanted to, how do they find you on social media? How do they get in touch with you? What if somebody wants to set up a call or do that? How would they reach out?
You can just straight up DM me, and it's just at Justin Wenzel. No dots, no underscores, just at Justin Wenzel.
Just like
it
you,
will be
just
me too on
straightforward,
the
right?
other end.
Yeah, it is 'cause
straightforward.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, Justin, I know that we both have busy schedules, and it's always an honor to get to talk to you and learn from you, brother. So, as we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with, or don't have to be scary of the big guy all the time? I'm pretty gentle, but what do you guys have for the people? What do you got?
I think right away, and so many people are starting to, build personal brands and things like that. Guys, just be authentic. Be yourself. You don't need to flex. You don't need to pretend like you're something you're not. You don't need to be overly masculine if you're not actually, a Navy SEAL. Like, just be a human being and care about the connection and bettering somebody's life, if that's the route that you're going in. I think that's what we should all be doing, right? Take our wisdom, take our knowledge, take our experience, and pass it to the person still struggling. So, Brian, I really appreciate you having me on here, dude. This was really nice. Hopefully we can do one in person soon. I'd love to come see the actual studio and have you in my studio as well.
Absolutely, brother. Justin, thanks again for your time. And guys, thank you for watching Podcast on Wheels. If you got something from this show, share it. Reach out to Justin. Just like he said, he's going to respond and he can help you. Guys, thanks again for watching Podcast on Wheels.